Greetings, everybody. It's Lily Willy. I'm based in the Pacific Northwest. Beyond that, if you haven't seen one of my videos where I share more information, rather, on where I live, then I'm not going to share it here. But I crave the pardon in advance of those of you who are a little bit more apolitical, or at least a little bit more totally apolitical than I, for my sharing today. This afternoon, I'm addressing myself unto my fellow proud quote-unquote libtards. You know, those of us who are left-wing enough that those amongst the right wing who choose to use their disagreement with us as a reason to put us down with insults just as bad, to be fair, as those many of us have at some point used in our development about them. Call us. And yes, that was a run-on sentence. I'm a language major and a proud word nerd. And it's partly from that perspective and through that lens that today I'm addressing you. I grew up, even though I only ever set foot on Hungarian soil for a couple of weeks in 1996, this lifetime, speaking Hungarian as my first language, even though I grew up here. And I learned Hungarian from the cradle and English when I was 3. At age 6 is when I started learning how to read and write. And read and write English. And a little bit in Hungarian. I already spoke fluent Hungarian by then. I majored in German in university, and I have tutored Hungarian since I was about 13 or 14. And if you count the amount of time, the number of times when I sat in on my dad's Hungarian classes that he taught at a local university, helping his students occasionally with their homework than since I was about 8 or 9. And I want to be open with you. I have occasionally, with glee, spoofed, satirized, and otherwise mocked Trump, the current resident in chief, along with many other of my fellow liberals. But I've been thinking about something, and it's a matter dear to my work, to my soul, my spirit, and yes, my heart, as a language tutor. Those of us who choose to exercise our freedom of speech through occasionally communicating our discontent with the resident in chief, Donald Trump, aka number 45, through mockery, spoofing, song parodies, or other, really should stop making fun of him based on how he talks. I'm saying this as a language tutor and as somebody with social anxiety who did not really start developing the ability to feel comfortable socializing with people in groups until I was about 25 or 6, and really didn't start feeling fully comfortable reaching out to individuals I didn't know until I was about 18. Before that, it was a painful, scary process for me to start smiling at strangers walking down the street and a very long process of watching myself inside and watching them too and their responses to me while carefully selecting my words. Inwardly surprised for years when I wasn't mocked or reviled just for opening my mouth. Because I was really scared all the time of people I didn't know. I didn't start ordering my own food until I was 18 for that very reason. And I didn't make my own doctor's appointments until I was 20 because I didn't know who would pick up. Our resident in chief is not world renowned for being a good speaker. we can fairly well attest to that. A passionate speaker betimes. For those who like what he has to say, an inspirational one. And at least towards those he cares to win over, a charismatic one. But he's not a skilled one. He has also amply demonstrated that he shares with a goodly number of Americans a relatively sizable degree of undereducatedness about American geography. Sadly, in this he isn't alone. He may be wealthy. He may or may not, in his private heart, be as much of an asshole as many people seem to believe. I don't know. I haven't met him. I don't have enough data to give a fair evaluation. That said, what I can give, what I feel is a fair evaluation of, and I say this as someone who had been critical of Trump's speaking ability. And of the content of the speeches he hath made. If we're going to be critical of the Resident-in-Chief, we should be focusing on the idea content we're apt of his speeches. And of the insult bombs in verbal content he had been sending of everybody he disagrees with or disagrees with him as a president and as a person.
It's 1:30.
It is amply fair for those who disagree with him to criticize what he says. It is amply fair and just, and perhaps necessary, depending on your purpose, to also to criticize with as with as much harshness, politely, and we're apt, like good, educated, articulate people, where that fits, of how he says something, in tone, in emotional tone, in the damagingness of its effects or potential effects on our foreign relations, on our PR offline as well as online, but not on any of the following: his inability or struggle with finding words in the moment that fit what he wants to say. We should not be too harsh on things such as any overuse, whether real or perceived, on our side by him, of filler words like very, really, etc. You know, the type of words that you are discouraged in college and good high schools from using very much as adjectives in an essay. Those. And even in cases where he says something that inspires in us the SMH or shakes my head response on the internet, or would inspire those of us in my crowd, or maybe just a little younger or just a little older, to go, no, 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 no. Why did you say that? Why did you say that? Why did you say that? I'll tell you why. I've been reading some things on the internet. What, really? And I've encountered an article twice now written by a woman who had served as a speech pathologist who believes that our current resident-in-chief may have a speaking disorder. She is someone who hath not met him personally, and she hath not had a chance to analyze him as a client. However, she listed many symptoms, a few of which have been the triggers amongst our kind for mockery of him, including the filler words. The frequent use of filler words. And she called them empty words, sometimes incorrectly, using them as symptoms frequently associated with someone's having a speech disorder. And I will tell you personally that may very, very, very well be accurate. It can also be associated with someone who had social anxiety, with or without an additional neurological or verbal disorder. My verbal IQ, whenever it was tested on the blankety blank neuropsychological evaluations and standardized testing, tested through the roof. Superb. From about first grade onward. My ability to find a word particularly if I'm really emotional in the moment, and doubly if that emotion is nerves, is not always so great. I have next to no common ground politically that I can observe with Mr. Trump. But I'm a language tutor. I have fluency in 2 languages and minimum conversational command with various levels of ability. In about 3 others. And I'm learning more. And no, it doesn't bother my brain. And I've tutored in my time from about age 12 or 13, on again, off again for pay, students most of them who heard about me after reaching out to my dad to request him for lessons. Of various levels of facility with learning foreign languages. Some of them, not all, showed some problem with with spelling modern English correctly without intending to spell differently from standard modern English. And I have felt at differing points many of the standard little petty annoyances that a tutor with a long-term student who is still struggling in the same darn thing or the same darn things each lesson had felt. But there's one word that is not in my ability vocabulary, and that's impossible. I don't give up on my students easily. And I don't give up on most people easily. And while I have not met Trump, and I have a lot of issues with the content of his speeches and of his Twitter bombs, and such like. But I'm telling you, as a tutor, as a BA in German, and a lifelong language geek, criticize him all you want.
It's 1:45.
For the content of his speeches. But don't mock him. Don't mock him for any of those things that I've mentioned here. Mock his ideas where you feel it is justified. Criticize them, but don't mock how he talks. There are two reasons for that. Any of you listening to this who are counted among my fellow libtards, quote unquote, who heard of anybody in the general public doing that to somebody in any job. Based on a disability. Speech disability or speech disorder included. Would have the ACA, the ACLU, breathing down the necks of the people or companies who did that in a flash, and you know it. Those of you who have ever wrestled with either a speech defect, a speech disorder, or a neurological disorder, or even a social anxiety disorder resulting in a stammer or long pauses betwixt the parts of your sentence, or even long pauses from nerves or uncertainty betwixt your sentences. Know precisely what it's like to grapple with sounding bad, whether it's just to you or whether it is sounding much, much worse than you would really like to sound in that moment. Because from whatever it is you have, you're not finding the damned word you're looking for. If you put him down for that, then you're being as bad as he was when he mocked the journalist. With the disability on camera. Then you're being just as bad as he's ever been when he's interrupted somebody mid-question or mid-sentence to put them down and make fun of them. And I know you're better than that. And more than that, you're putting every wish, whenever you do that, you're putting every wish you have ever had. That people would bear with you for your speech struggles, or your verbal struggles, or your social struggles down. And you are putting every single one of your desires that our society would be more patient with forgiving of and tolerant of people with speech disabilities or social disabilities or neurological disabilities down. Do you really want to do that? Think about it. Bless you.